Hello everybody, welcome to another week of learning in maths. Last week we looked at measure and we then followed on by looking at measuring distance. This week we're continuing from that by looking at a special type of distance called perimeter. On the screen at the moment we've got three sports pitches or courts, not actual size obviously, they're views from above, what we call aerial views. And we might want to look at these and measure how big these rectangular spaces are. So let's look at the football pitch. Now just the rectangle around the edge of the football pitch, not the markings in the middle. If I asked somebody, how big is this football pitch? What could we measure about it? Pause the slide and have a think about it, and when you're ready, move on. So one of the things that we could measure is we could measure how far it is along the edge of the rectangle of all four sides. So if I started, for example, in the bottom left corner, I went up, I went along, I went down, and I went back along and finished in the bottom left corner, that would be something called perimeter. So perimeter, what that we're learning about today, is the distance around the edge of a 2D shape. So a rectangle is a 2D, two-dimensional shape. The distance around the edge of a 2D shape is the perimeter of that shape. I might also measure something called the area. The area is the space in the middle of the 2D shape. So it's not the distance around the edge, it's the space in the middle. We're not going to look at area this week, we're just looking at perimeter, but area is something that we will look at the following week. So if I want to find the perimeter of this football pitch, let's think first of all, when we measure anything, we need to think about what unit of measurement we're using. So what unit of measurement would I use for this football pitch? So here are my units of measurement that we usually use for measuring distance. So millimeters, centimeters, meters, and kilometers. Well, if I'm measuring a football pitch, it's probably not so big that I'd want to use kilometers, but it's certainly bigger than anything that would involve using millimeters or centimeters. So I would probably want to use meters. Now, some of you might know that in football, sometimes distances are measured in yards. That's not something we're talking about today, but for now we're looking at meters. I might measure this line, find it was 70 meters. This line is 100 meters. This line is 70 meters. This line is 100 meters. If you want to pause the video and work out the total altogether, please do so. So it's 70 meters plus 100 meters plus 70 meters plus 100 meters, so it's 340 meters altogether. So the perimeter of this rectangle is 340 meters. So a tennis court, it's 11 meters and 24 meters, and another 11 meters and 24 meters. So if I wanted to measure this one, what I could do is I could add 11 and 24 and another 11 and 24. Notice in the calculation, what I've done is I've added the first 11 meters at 24 meters and got 35 meters. I've then used that to work out that the other 11 meters plus 24 meters is also 35 meters. So altogether, it's 35 meters, one short side and one long side. Add another 35 meters, one short side and one long side. So the whole perimeter equals 70 meters. Using what we've just seen in the last slide, I'm going to show you that this basketball court is 15 meters on the short side and 28 meters on the long side. Now all these shapes are rectangles. We'll be looking at other shapes in a minute. Using what you know already, if you want to pause the video, can you work out what the length of the other two sides will also be? Remember, we're using a rectangle. And if you want, can you also work out what the perimeter of the whole rectangle will be? So the distance around the edge of the whole rectangle. So we can see that because the short side at one end is 15 meters, the short side at the other end will also be 15 meters. And we can see because the top line is 28 meters, the bottom line will also be 28 meters. That's because it's a rectangle, so the opposite sides are the same length. So this time, I'm going to add the two short sides together, 15 add 15, because that's an easy sum to do. So 15 meters add 15 meters is 30 meters. 28 meters add 28 meters is 56 meters, which makes the total perimeter 86 meters. Now we looked at rectangles so far. One special thing that we can see when we're looking at squares, if I show you a square here and tell you that one side is 10 centimetres, if you want to pause the video, see if you can work out what the perimeter of the whole square will be. So we know that in a square, all four sides are equal. So what that means is that if one side is 10 centimetres, the perimeter will be 4 lots of 10 centimetres. This will be 10, this will be 10, this will be 10. So the perimeter will be 4 lots of 10 centimetres, 4 times 10 centimetres, which is 40 centimetres. So for squares, it's nice and easy. If we know one side, we can definitely work out the length of the whole perimeter. Okay, let's look at some more difficult shapes now, and I'm going to introduce something else that's also a bit challenging here, because my distances are now going to be in centimetres. So this distance is 150 centimetres, this distance is 150 centimetres, and this distance is 170 centimetres. So let's see how we would work out the perimeter for this. If you want to pause the video and try it, please do so. Okay, so I'm adding this time 150 centimetres add 150 centimetres, because I think that's quite an easy two numbers to add together. I'm getting 300 centimetres. I can then add the third line of the triangle, which is 170 centimetres, and altogether I've got 470 centimetres. So the perimeter of this triangle is 470 centimetres. Okay, I'm going to pause this and see if you can think out a way you might use to find the perimeter of this pentagon. Remember, we can add the sides in any order, so if you want to stop and try adding them together, please do that now. Okay, so the way I would do this, there's not one right way, is I'm going to take these two first on the left hand side, 40 plus 190. So 40 centimetres plus 190 centimetres is 230 centimetres. Now that I've done 190 plus 40, I can do it again to measure the other two sides, and that's another 230 centimetres. And I then know that the length of these four sides joined together will be 230 centimetres add 230 centimetres, which will be 460 centimetres altogether. Then it's fairly simple for me to add the 300 centimetres at the end, and my total perimeter is 760 centimetres. If I wanted to then call that 7 metres 60 centimetres, I could do that, but I don't have to. Okay, we're now going to look at something that makes it more difficult, and it's based on what we did last week. So this shape, which is almost a rectangle but not quite, is a route from the school down to Cameron Toll, along to the next roundabout and back up. And the perimeter is 400 metres, add 1.5 kilometres, add 500 metres, add 1.6 kilometres. So I want you to stop and think, what makes finding the perimeter of this shape difficult? Okay, so one of the reasons why it's difficult is because, and this follows on from last week, we've got different units of measurement. So two of the lines are in kilometres and two of the lines are in metres. Now if we add these four distances together, just by adding the numbers together, that's not going to work. What we need to do is we need to convert the distances into the same unit of measurement so that we can then add. So I'm going to start by looking at these two distances, 1.6 kilometres and 1.5 kilometres. So I know that 1.5 kilometres, 1 kilometre 500 metres. I also know that 1.6 kilometres is the same as 1 kilometre and 600 metres. Now if you don't understand that part yet, that's okay, that's because you haven't done enough with decimals to understand that. That's something you'll do later on. So now that I've got kilometres and metres, I can then say, all right, I've now got 400 metres, 1 kilometre 500 metres, 500 metres, and 1 kilometre 600 metres. Now, and here's a good tip just for general when we're adding lots of numbers together, we look for numbers that are easy to add together. And straight away I've picked out kilometre 600 metres plus 400 metres. That's got 600 plus 400 there. I like that because it's nice and easy. So I've now got 1 kilometre plus 600 metres at 400 metres, which is a kilometre plus another kilometre, 2 kilometres. Similarly, the other two lines that are left, I've got 1 kilometre 500 metres and 500 metres. If I add them together, that's 1 kilometre add 1,000 metres, and it's 2 kilometres. So now my distance is 2 kilometres add 2 kilometres, which is 4 kilometres around the whole shape. So that's an example of how, if we have different units of measurement, when we add them together, just like we did last week, we can change them into the same unit of measurement and then do calculations involving. So here's our key learning points from today. Perimeter is a special name given to the distance around the edge of a 2D shape, and to find the perimeter, we need to know the length of each side. If we know the length of each side, we can just add the sides together to find the perimeter. Now, area is a word that people often confuse with perimeter, but it's not the same thing. Area is quite different. We'll be learning about that next week. Area is the space inside a 2D shape. A couple of advanced learning points. When we add sides together, we need to make sure we're using the same unit of measurement for each side. If we're not using the same unit of measurement for each side, we need to convert to make it the same. So if we have a shape where some sides are in meters and some sides are in centimeters, we may have to convert it to make sure we can find the perimeter. For today, I've got some slides here that will give you some practice at finding perimeter. So it sounds obvious. I've just put down in the bottom right corner here, these are scale drawings. Don't try and get a ruler out and measure them on the screen, that won't work. I've got a square, a rectangle and a triangle. If you want to try and work out what the perimeter of these shapes would be, that would be great. You don't have to leave the answers anywhere, but this is just some practice for you. If you want to use your square paper jotter to draw the shapes, you can do so. Obviously, the shape that's got meters, you would need to draw it using centimeters instead of meters, unless you've got a very big bit of paper. But you could draw them out and measure the perimeter, or you could use the math skills we've learned today to try and find the perimeter. So there's some basic practice for you. If you would like to find a more challenging perimeter, you can try and do this one. Again, you might want to draw it out in your jotter. This one's difficult because not all the sides are labelled, so I'll leave you to work out how you'd work out the missing sides. It's a little bit more challenging. This is not for everybody. If you don't know how to do this yet, that's absolutely fine. And in case you found that fairly easy, you want an extra challenge, here's a final one for some of you. Again, there are sides missing, so it's not straightforward finding out the perimeter of the whole shape. So there are some sides missing, so it's not straightforward finding the perimeter of the whole shape. So if you want, go back to the questions and try and do them. You don't have to. If you want, do the questions at the end of this presentation. You can go back and listen to the presentation again before you do it. You don't have to hand anything in. These are just practice questions, but it will help you in advance of tomorrow's lesson. So I'll speak to everybody tomorrow at the maths lesson, and meanwhile, enjoy the rest of the day.